Mr. President,
The senator from Montana,
I would ask unanimous consent the quorum call be lifted.
without objection.
Mr. President, I rise today to address a frustrating situation that has brought us here today. For months, I've been calling on Congress to come to the middle and negotiate a responsible budget deal that works for the American people. But time and time again, whether it was in the Appropriations Committee or here on the Senate floor, members of this body refused to have a conversation about how to do that. They dug their heels in and they said, it's my way or the highway. Now we are here down to the wire and finally realize that sequestration is damaging. It's something that we've been saying from day one. Unfortunately, it cost the Speaker of the House his job. It wasted months of time, and it continued to erode what's left of the faith that the American people have in Congress. Coming from Montana, this is incredibly frustrating. Folks back home are reasonable. They talk to their neighbors, even if they don't agree with them. They compromise, they negotiate, and they give a little, and most of the time they get a lot. This body could learn a lot from my constituents. The Senate was designed to be a deliberative body. It was supposed to be a place where conversations and compromise happen, where we reach across the aisle and partner with our colleagues who we might not always agree with. That kind of bipartisanship requires more time, harder work, tougher conversations. Sure, it's a lot easier to scream and yell at the other side, so the super PACs and the millionaires that fund too much of our politics these days know that we didn't back down. But at the end of the day, that doesn't move the country forward. And unfortunately, that happened again this year. Had we started these budget negotiations back in July, when 10 moderate members of this body first rang the alarm, we wouldn't be in a last-minute scramble today. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in the Senate. The only time folks are talking to one another is when there's a crisis. The only time when folks are working together is when we're faced with fiscal cliffs, economic meltdowns, and catastrophes. I hope that we realize that Congress is the only place in this country that operates like this. Businesses and families plan, they talk, and they certainly don't wait until the last minute to get their financial house in order. So why does it take an emergency for Congress to govern? Why does it take a looming deadline for folks to come to their senses and to do their jobs? It's because the voices of the middle are getting drowned out by the voices on the fringes. We have become afraid of compromise. In many circles, it's a dirty word, one that should never be uttered. So here we are today. It's just a few days before we default on our debt, and we have wasted so much time. Our inability to tackle these issues earlier this year caused the appropriations process to break down. It caused an unnecessary veto of the Defense Authorization Bill, something our troops are waiting for us to resolve while they stand on the front lines. Now, I know this budget deal isn't perfect, but it is the product of compromise, however last minute it may be, and however limited the ability of senators to weigh in on it is. But by raising the debt ceiling, we will prevent interest rates from skyrocketing and the value of the dollar from plummeting. By ending the sequester, we will do away with severe budget cuts that are hurting our veterans, our seniors, our students, and working families. We will shore up Social Security and allow ourselves to make responsible investments in our national security, in education, in healthcare, and in our public lands. And it reduces a massive premium hike that was scheduled to impact 46,000 Montana seniors who use Medicare for their health insurance. This legislation will keep those premiums more manageable. Now, those accomplishments are critically important to our economy, and they are worthy of this Senate's support. But as with anything that comes together at the last minute, There are provisions that I don't like, things that could have been fixed if we had taken more time to negotiate. Take, for instance, the budget's impact on our rural hospitals. There are provisions in here that could severely limit access to rural health care. I'm committed to addressing those concerns in the upcoming appropriations process because folks in Montana and other rural states shouldn't have to drive hundreds of miles to see a doctor. Like I said, this budget isn't perfect. And the most disappointing thing is that it could have been so much better. But in the spirit of compromise that got us here today, we need to use that conversation to make sure we get things done. I know that there will always be those who refuse to get off the ideological soapbox and who like to watch others do the hard work of governing. But those folks usually don't last long with my constituents. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.